To me, New York represents kind of the ultimate freedom, especially coming from the suburbs. The New York filmmakers, people like Spike Lee and Jarmusch, you know, just like these were the paragons of cool. I think what started me in making movies was basically just going into New York and seeing independent film for the first time. Like, you know, I'm from New Jersey, and one day I was working in that store that we shot Clerks, and my friend and I looked in the Village Voice, and we read a review for a movie called Slacker. This is what I want to do. Like, you know, if this guy can do it, why couldn't I do it, you know? When we set out to make Clerks, we didn't want to spend a lot of cash because we didn't have a lot of cash to spend. Most of it was on a bunch of credit cards I had. So we kind of looked at Slacker as a model. And since, you know, New York is very close, New York is it's one of the best rental houses in the world. You can find anything you need. I don't think we ever would have made the movie if, like, we didn't have all the stuff to rent from New York.
Film Video Arts is a nonprofit media arts center, and it was founded in 1968. It used to be called Young Filmmakers. Basically service a lot of different types of people who are beginning, film and video makers, to people who are advanced, some people who are in the industry. Jim Jarmusch did like a lot of work when he was at NYU for Strangers in Paradise. Kevin Smith, I believe he did a lot of editing. When he first started editing the project, he did Clerks here. They want to come here for the rates, it's cheap. There's also a community of filmmakers here, video makers. So let's say you're coming here to do your work, you can network, you can ask questions, find other people to work with. So it's definitely a stimulating community.
We're at Rafiq's now, and Rafiq is Lebanese provider of film stock and video to mostly the underground, but now the underground is the overground as well, so it's really to everybody. I've heard that he sells more Kodak film than any other retailer in the United States. I used to buy all kinds of film from him, negative, positive, reversal, high contrast, anything you want, he can get it for you. And I used to edit film here on a Steenbeck that Rafiq had in exchange for work that I would do for him. I put in some of this flooring here in exchange for time on the Steenbeck. You can see there are all kinds of people here. They might be doing a corporate film, they might be doing an underground sort of school project. Rafiq does not discriminate.
20 years ago, which is, I guess, what is that, 76, 77? I came from Paris. I was living in Paris, checking films out at the Cinematheque, and I was working with my grandfather. And I knew I wanted to come back to America, and I figured New York was the place to be. I mean, at that time, it was kind of like, it was a really good place for artists to be. It's a little like Brooklyn is now. Filmmakers tend to help each other out in New York, or there's not that real competitive, you know, with me anyway, and the people I know, it's like if someone calls me up and says, I'm trying to put a film together, do you know any cameramen, or can you call that actor for me, or I'm really into that. I like that. Very family-like.
What do you think?
I mean, I always refer to, like, Irwin as Uncle Irwin, you know.
In the early times when I started working in this film laboratory, there were no independent filmmakers. Very, very few. They were not into the world of theatrical films. It was a small group of people that started in those days. I would like to say I hope they came here because we turned out an excellent product, but a lot of them I was personally involved. Jim Jarmusch was doing his first film. It was a black and white film, and I can't even remember the name of it. That's what happens when we deal with an old man. I come from a family of filmmakers. My father was a filmmaker. My brother's a film director. And so I understood their problems. So it was easier for me to relate to that individual than another person who is running a film laboratory. We try to be competitive. We can't be as cheap as everybody. The way I would help filmmakers is deferments, which are meaning they don't pay for all their work, and we give them a long time to pay. And I would make those judgments not based on the net worth or how rich he was, but based on an interpretation of his character, and also on interpretation of the project he was working on. The trading came about through mainly, some of it came about because I was forced into it, and not that I really intended to trade. And then I started to get involved with a lot of photographers who wanted to make movies. And some of them, and I'm an old man, I better, Danny Lyons, of course. I've traded with Danny Lyons. Bruce Weber, who was a very famous fashion photographer. I have a number of his. Robert Frank. I even bought some. How do you like that? I find being involved with creative people is inspirational to yourself. It provides an older person with an insight in how younger people think, which is really, it's a younger world. Most people my age are always dealing with people in their own age group. So I have a wonderful opportunity to be involved with a cross-section of human beings.
AIVF stands for the Association of Independent Film and Video Makers. What we do here is we provide resource information for independent film and video makers. We don't have production facilities, we don't have editing facilities, we don't have equipment, but if you needed any information such as that, you can come here. Our membership entails for about 5,000 members, and this is both domestic and foreign. In these doors, we get people, everything from a person who wants to do a film and they know nothing about it and they're starting from scratch, or you get people a little bit more established and they've worked on film. Well, one of the main things we do here is we produce this magazine, the Independent Film and Video Monthly. What this magazine covers is basically everything from interviews with new filmmakers, interviews with established film and video makers. It has a classified section for independent film and video makers to find each other. It has articles on new technologies. It has ads or whatever you need for film and video. It's a handy little magazine, and it's very popular among the independent film and video community.
It's a great place for independent filmmaking because there's a lot of people here who work on movies because they care about the stories that they're working on.
New York gave me a community of filmmaking and filmmakers that does markedly differ from the industry, the dominant industry. I think there have been so many amazing phases in the history in New York City, in arts that go beyond film. Through the years, and there's definitely traces of that sort of history and legacy that draws me to New York and makes me want to be here more than anywhere else, or want to live here more than anywhere else.
New York is seen as a place where the creative people are.
Put it this way, if there's any place I'd want to be to make films, it's New York. I think it still is like that because you get a lot of young people who are excited just about film. You know, the idea of smelling, raw stock and getting cameras and running around the streets. And I still think that's here.
Well, I think the thing about New York City, it's a melting pot. You got all types of people everywhere, just walking around the streets together. So there are a lot of stories to be told from that.
All you have to do in New York is open up your eyes and unclog your ears, and there's stories all over the place.
I think it has to do with the environment. I think it has to do with the city.
No matter what happens to New York, it always has that new wave of people constantly coming in, constantly. No one gives a shit about film in New York, which is the best thing that's the best place to make films.
I don't think I could live in LA, you know?
Ooh, LA. I don't know. I went out there a couple of times. It's really segregated. They follow me up to my hotel room every time. People seem kind of phony.
In Los Angeles, there is one film community or one television community, and that's the standard mainstream unionized system.
I can't imagine like actually doing a movie out there.
We shot my film Safe in Los Angeles, where I am from.
We were a New York film on location in LA. That is completely what it was.
No, I had no interest in moving back there whatsoever.
It's just dead. All you see in LA is like people picking their nose at red lights in their cars, you know?
And because I can't seem to master driving, Los Angeles is not a fun place for me to be.
I like film a lot, but you don't want to like live and eat and sleep and diet and talk about it over dinner and do businesses and things like that, you know? It's more of a business out there. It's less artistic, I think.
In New York, you get more, it's less mainstream. I mean, there is mainstream here, but it's less mainstream, and you get people who are just tired of the Hollywood system. And they want to do their own thing, and they want to have control of their own work, and they don't want to tell the same stories over and over again that Hollywood does.
Yeah. Well, New York is really good for the independent scene. I know a friend who worked in a film in California. Independent scene is kind of different. It's like you get all the people who work on porno movies, and and they still want to work for money. In New York, and more people are more into the arts. They'll work in it for a payment or maybe for free.
I think the reason why New York has become sort of a center for independent filmmaking in the States is almost more why people are voting for Clinton, which is because they don't want Dole. I'm not so sure it is, I mean, an ideal place for filmmaking, given the films that are coming out of it.
Now I don't even go to them anymore much. I mean, it's disappointing because there's very few art houses anymore. I mean, there's still the venues like, you know, the Public, and there's still the Thalia, I mean, the Uptown, and then there's still Film Forum. It's a little sad because I love to be inspired by other filmmakers, and I love to see other, but I guess you go to film festivals for that, or you rent videos and watch them at home, but it's not the same.
One of the things we do that's entirely different from a commercial theater is we have an ongoing relationship with our audience in terms of printed materials. We have very detailed calendars which discuss the films and give background and give people an idea of just what it is they're coming to see. After all, they're not coming to see a film with Sylvester Stallone. Well, I think a large percentage of the audience is in fact made up of filmmakers and other people in the arts, but it's also an aging audience. The younger generation, people in their 20s and even early 30s, have much less familiarity with films by Fellini and Pasolini and, you know, the great Bergman, the great artists who came up during the 60s.
Now young guys just want to see like the flashy new Hollywood film, you know, the Quentin Tarantino film, which is really weird, you know, because that, when I was young, that was not at all hip. It was like liking Elvis Presley.
I think we're talking about a younger generation that in many respects is more conservative, is less politically astute, is less aware of the world around them in an international sense than the generation that grew up in the 60s. Now, perhaps that's, you know, my prejudice, because obviously I did come of age in the 60s.
Independent films are big right now. It used to be that during the 80s, everyone wanted to be a lawyer. Now everyone wants to be a filmmaker. Everybody wants to make a movie. I have a lot of people come in here who know nothing about filmmaking, and they're just like, I just want to make a movie.
They see that someone can take a film, make an independent feature-length film for $25,000, $30,000 and get it released. So buying that dream, a lot of people themselves feel they can become independent filmmakers. A lot of those people come through these doors. They're people with regular jobs, and they say, hey, I want to be in the film business too. I have an idea for a film. Some of them are going for the quick buck. There are some independent film and video makers who see the Ed Burns, they see the Robert Rodriguez, they see the guy who made Clerks, forgot his name.
I think largely the film of independent field has changed from the days when, you know, when people like Cassavetes and even early Jarmusch were working at it. It now becomes like an entry level thing, you know, to kind of a career in movies. And I guess like it's something to a degree that I'm sure on some level I was kind of guilty of as well, you know?
When I was first making films, and Jim and Spike and all these people were first making their films, it was just about loving films and getting in trouble and getting in debt and reinventing cinema and not worried so much about where it took you. Whereas I think now, unfortunately, because of the hype around independent filmmaking, independent films are starting to resemble commercial films. And they're more like showcases to get yourself to Hollywood. It's like a ticket to Hollywood.
There's certainly more American.
Because of the hype around independent filmmaking, independent films are starting to resemble commercial films. And they're more like showcases to get yourself to Hollywood. It's like a ticket to Hollywood.
There's certainly more American independent films now than there has ever been before. It's a field that people have gone into in droves and great numbers. I think movie making, you know, is considered glamorous, and truly it isn't, because so much of it is simply putting together the financing to make those movies.
I mean, it happened to us. It's like, I think, even though we weren't trying, I think we had more to say with our first film, with Clerks, than we did with our second film, with Mallrats. You know, once we got noticed and people were just like, well, what do you want to do next? You know, we were like, all right, well, let's make this. We wanted to make like a movie. And I think it suffered because of that.
In terms of quantity, there's a great deal more than there has ever been before. In terms of quality, it's the same story it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. There are a few people of tremendous talent who have something to say and say it in an exciting and original way. And most of the work is of minor interest and possibly, you know, you could just call it mediocre.
If you have an independent filmmaker who's making a mainstream film on a low budget, they would probably have an easier chance of getting something through to one of the bigger festivals. If you have someone who's doing something totally experimental, they would still have a hard time as they would have, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago.
It still requires the same amount of passion to make a movie today as it did 30 years ago. No question about it. But today there's another element which is very strong in individuals. And that's because this generation has been looking at television all their life. I think that one of the strongest motivations of human beings is fame.
It's glamorous for some people. Some people think it's glamorous. They think it's hip.
I would say it's not even about the need to be a director and make a film. I think it's really about making a buck. You know? I mean, I think a lot of those people, 10 years ago, a lot of those filmmakers would have come out of college, borrowed some money from their mom or dad, and become entrepreneurs, you know? And like maybe invented a microchip or something.
There's a focus on marketing rather than a focus on simply expressing oneself and using the film as a work of art. There's a tendency among young filmmakers to think about how to sell the film as opposed to how to make the film a good film in the first place.
Why do you think those people, if that's the motivation, are in New York? Because
I think
independent.
Yeah, because I think it's it might be a little easier.
Huh.
Then there are people who are really not into it for anything more than just expressing themselves and telling a story.
There are people who are serious about it. But again, I think that on a whole, there are people who are not happy with the content of, let's say, mainstream films that are out there right now, who decided they want to see their voice represented.
We shot, like Clerks, we shot for about 27,000, 28,000, in between there. Mallrats we made for 6.1 million, and that was with a studio with Universal. And Chasing Amy, we just got finished shooting for 250 grand, so we actually went down again in budget. And that was the first time I think I made a movie because I absolutely had something to say.
Well, the film's called Nowhere Fast. It's this Super 16 blew up a 35 millimeter. It's about, takes place one sunny afternoon and then one Friday afternoon in Brooklyn. It's about people looking for things in their lives, you know, looking for states of mind and metaphysical things, looking for lost children, looking for drugs. It cost $30,000 to do it. I know, I'm still not sure if I get a distributor or not like that. I had nothing to do. I had a lot of my friends I could use for free, and I had some money to do. I said, why not? I haven't done a feature. Where's it be New York? New York is, you know, it's always funny. I don't think New York is that special. Being independent for me is, I don't want to be independent.
I really don't know. I mean, that's like, as long as I can keep making films, that's my place. I wish I was part of more of a movement, and I wish I was like, in some ways I think it might be easier, but I just want to make good films for very little money.
After we shot Mallrats, we just felt really bad because we're like, why did that cost $6 million, you know? And that's because we left it in the hands of somebody else who told us, well, it's going to cost this. And if we were to produce it ourselves, like the way that we produced Clerks and both Chasing Amy, it wouldn't have cost as much as it did. I think it was very important for us to kind of get our hands on it again and rein in the budget.
I feel like that the links that once joined art and film and theater and film and other forms of creative work and filmmaking have been severed along with the sort of commercial discovery of independent film. And along with that, in a larger sense, the grant-giving organizations in this country have stopped giving grants to filmmakers. I don't know if I would be a filmmaker today if it weren't for the grants that were once available to me at the beginning that have now completely and totally dried up.
It's kind of hard now to continue viewing New York as the epicenter of independent film because movies are being made everywhere now. I think, like, as it goes on, as independent film becomes more and more popular, you know, before it'll dip again, which I'm sure it will. But during this renaissance, this resurgence of independent film, I think you're going to see a lot more films coming from other places than New York. And
it's kind of like independent film is dead, but long live independent film. You know, you just never know when something's going to come completely out of nowhere.